Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Steven Universe Retrospectives. And today we're going to be discussing episodes 17 and 18 of Steven Universe Future, Homeworld Bound, and Everything's Fine. So to recap. Throughout the majority of Steven Universe Future, Steven has been dealing with some flare-ups, as we'll call them. Basically, what these flare-ups have been amounting to is that Steven has been glowing pink at certain intervals whenever he's been feeling certain negative emotions. Anger, sadness, anxiety, stress, all that stuff. And as Steven has been dealing with these flare-ups, Steven's also been kind of developing more emotional issues, as little by little things have been kind of snowballing for him personal wise. His friends have been kind of moving on with their lives and been solving their own problems without his help, and every time when he tried venting his frustrations, it came out as a literal monster in the form of Cactus Steven. He feels like that he has no purpose if nobody needs his help, and in his attempts to try and gain some form of stability and hold on to people he still cares about, and things just kind of keep blowing up in his face. Like when he tried, we'll get like at one point he tried proposing to Connie, and she pretty much just gave him a rough equivalent of "not right now." There was it, and then that led to him starting to swell up and get upset because he felt that Connie wasn't in the same place as him. His dad tried to comfort him and be there for him, but unfortunately, his dad's advice was only appropriate to his dad and was not appropriate to Steven, which caused Steven to lash out at his dad because he began equating his dad to him, and eventually, as Steven's powers kept getting worse, he went to go see Jasper because he wanted help to actually control these abilities as they were starting to flare up more and more. And while Jasper offered the advice of train with them, learn to funnel them, and control them, which inherently is not a bad thing, well, things that only got worse, as while Steven was sparring with Jasper, having mastered his powers, he wound up going too far and he shattered her. Now, he was ultimately able to fix her, as he was able to gather her pieces, and then he just bolted back to the house, and using the essences of all the diamonds, which of course includes himself, he was able to repair Jasper's gem and restore her to normal. But ultimately, while Steven tried apologizing to Jasper about all this, she only arose and then bowed to him, stating that she bows to his superior strength, even calling him her diamond. Which, that statement horrified Steven, which is what leads to the first episode that we're going to be discussing, Homeworld Bound, as that picks up immediately after Jasper was restored, as the gems are banging on Steven's bathroom and wanting to know what the heck's up with him, and, well, since he was been with Jasper for several days, they want to know where he's been and why he hasn't gone, and when the or when well yeah, but from and as their one answers, well, the bathroom door opens and out comes Jasper, which at first the gems are confused by until they see Steven following after, and Steven is just he still looks horrified. And so as the gems begin questioning Steven about where he's been, why he hasn't contacted them, and so on and so forth, Steven just walks away. He just goes up to his room, he just goes upstairs and keeps going, with Jasper telling the gems that Steven doesn't need to provide an explanation. Her diamond can do whatever he wants, which confuses the gems something fierce, but Steven just keeps going. He doesn't just stop at his room. He goes up to his little outpost, so to speak, and goes to the warp pad with the gems and Jasper following after, as they want answers, but Steven, well, he shuts them out, both metaphorically and literally, as he glows pink and throws up a barrier to keep the gems from following, Jasper included, as he tells them that right now he's dealing with stuff, and and ultimately there are only the only people in the universe that he thinks can help him right now, well, they're the people he's been avoiding, and he thinks he has no choice but to go talk to them, and he doesn't want the gems to follow him. And which he even includes Jasper in that mix as well. It looks like Jasper wants to follow him, like she's been saluting this whole time. Basically, Steven just tells Jasper he doesn't want to be your master, and she needs to find something better to do with her life, which when she hears that, she just looks heartbroken. It's sad. But pretty much before Steven warps away, Garnet is able to tell Steven that no matter what happens, they'll always be his family before Steven warps away. And where does he warp to? The gem Homeworld. Because, well, if his diamond powers are coming in, then who better to help him than the diamonds? And, well, I'll say this. When Steven arrives on the gem Homeworld, It looks good. Actually, in fact, I'll actually say this right now. I like that we actually get to check in with the gem Homeworld again. Because after all, while we've been seeing the developments from Steven's whole escapade to dismantle the gem empire on Earth, we haven't really been seeing it across other parts of the universe beyond the occasional foray into space. Like when Steven went to go talk to the Lapises, who were causing issues by terraforming planets just because they liked doing that. So I do like that we're actually checking back in with the gem Homeworld, and I'll say this. I like how it's designed now. Like, I mentioned before, I mentioned how the gem Homeworld was colorful in a literal sense, but always felt sterile and cold and unwelcoming. Well, now it's colorful in the figurative sense too, as not only does it still have all the bright colors and flash and all the nice looking designs, but it also feels like it's now full of life, and actually people are and actually things feel happy as we see gems running around. We see banners all over the place. Hell, when Steven enters the Diamond throne room, we see that it's now essentially a tourist spot, as we see a Pearl leading a cold gaggle of gems and showing them the thrones and talking about the majesty of them. We see that there are actually open elections now in the gem Homeworld, as remember the Zircon lawyers from Steven's trial? They're now running for election, with people apparently deciding which party they want to vote for. As some people vote for the prosecuting Zircon, while some gems vote for the lawyer Zircon, the defending Zircon. Basically things are a lot better. Though when Steven overhears the tour guide talking about how you can feel like you're actually a diamond when you step into the throne room, it makes him wince. Although that tour group quickly leaves, and well, Steven ends up finding another familiar face here. As well, leaving the tour group behind, Spinel! Yeah, we see her back, and well, while her design is essentially the same from the end of Steven Universe the movie, her personality is actually a lot better. As the instant she sees Steven, she just runs up to him and then just gives him a big fat kiss on the face, and it's adorable, and I love it. Basically, it's clear that her time with the Diamonds has helped her out. She's doing a lot better now, she's not feeling as dependent, and she's just happy now. She's not vengeful, she's not angry, she's not sadistic. She's almost exactly like how she was when she was Pink Diamond's playmate, and it's adorable. I love her. She needs all the hugs. Seriously, she needs all the hugs. If someone is not hugging this poor child, then I'm gonna punch everybody. I mean it. You're next. But anyway, I'm off topic. Basically, Steven, at first Steven snaps at Spinel. He's able to calm down and talk to her, and she mentions how she's doing better, but she asks Steven what he's doing here, since he doesn't really get in contact with the Diamonds very often. As such, Steven talks about once again brings up how those diamond powers are coming out and how it's having an effect on him physically, how he's growing in size, swelling and all that. And when Spinel hears that, it's like, oh, so you're having a problem with your physical form? Well, you need to go talk to Yellow for that. And so Spinel drags Steven away to go see Yellow Diamond. And well, we actually start to see something interesting with the Diamonds here. As it turns out, after all of them turned over a new leaf because of Steven, their powers change, which I'll get back to my thoughts on that when I get to my thoughts on both of these episodes. But in the case of Yellow Diamond, her abilities allow her to alter a gem's form as she sees fit, and we see that work, and we see how she employs that as when Spinel and Steven go in to see her, she's actually gathering little bits and pieces from her gem experiments, the gem mutants who are basically forced fusions of gem fragments, and she's actually putting all the gems back together. Of course, the process isn't perfect, because the gems themselves are still cracked even when put back together. So even if a gem is able to fully reform after all their pieces are brought back together, their physical forms still are weird. Like, remember how weird Amethyst was when her gem got cracked? It's the same with them. But that's where Yellow comes in. Like I said, since her powers allow her to alter a gem's physical form, she can essentially touch the noodly gem and restore them to their proper form. Their gem is still cracked, but physically they're fine. It's nice, and I like it. As such, when Steven and Spinel make themselves known, at first Yellow's just happy to see them, and she starts talking about how she's happy that she's making all these changes, which sounds a little forced, but again, I'll get back to that when I talk about my thoughts on these episodes. And likewise, we see that And likewise, Spinel and her demonstrate her new powers as she makes Spinel's arms buff while her legs are little and tiny. But at this point, Steven just yells because he wants to get word in edgewise, and so after Yellow just kind of just goes quiet and says, "You have the floor, Steven." Steven once again explains how his powers are affecting his physical form, how he's growing and swelling when he doesn't want to. And so at first, Yellow thinks, "Oh, you just don't like growing. Here, I'll shrink you." And she makes Steven small. Steven says, "No, I don't want to be small." And she says, "Oh, well then why didn't you just say so?" So she just makes him bigger, which Steven freaks out at that too and says, "I don't want to be bigger, I just want to be me." And that freak out caused him to glow pink and actually create a small crater where he stands, which does surprise Yellow, though she's able to calm down and return Steven and Spinel back to their proper forms. And ultimately, Yellow is able to tell Steven that the problem really isn't anything to do with his physicality, as it's clear that whatever's going on with him, it's something rooted in his mind, emotional-wise, so to speak. And as a result, regardless of what form Steven wants to take, this problem is not something that Yellow can deal with. She deals in the physical, but if Steven wants to deal in the emotional, then he needs to go talk to Blue Diamond. And so Steven and Spinel go to see her, and it turns out how her powers have changed are, well, remember how, she still has empathic powers, and she can still pass on her emotions to others, but whereas before she was making everyone feel her sorrow, now she's able to make everyone feel her joy. As she herself states that when she started trying to make people happy, her tears actually, they dried up and turned into these little fluffy clouds. And just coming into contact with one of these clouds makes any of the gems that touch them feel happy, content, joyful, which we see demonstrated on Steven as one of these clouds brushes up against him, and he suddenly just starts smiling and laughing, which Steven is not okay with, but basically, this also leads to another song as Blue Diamond sings, and the song is called "A Little Reason Why," and it's pretty nice and sweet, and it basically is Blue singing about how Steven has changed her life for the better, and how basically she's been able to put her sorrows behind her as she's tried loving Steven, and how this has actually and how Steven as a person has just made her life better. I like it. It's sweet. And while Steven is spends the entirety of the song riding on one of these clouds, much to his own chagrin, well, as Steven is feeling the joy, he starts glowing pink again, and he thinks, no, this isn't right, which actually does dispel the cloud and almost caused him to fall flat on his face before Spinel comes in and saves him, doing a little tails flying scene. It's fun. But either way, Steven just kind of calls Blue out and says that he can't just make him feel happy altogether, and Blue says that that's literally my new power now. But like Yellow before her, Blue is able to determine that if Steven is not feeling happy even with the clouds, then this isn't a matter of him just feeling happy or sad, it's a matter of self-worth. That ultimately, if he doesn't think he's worthy of feeling happiness, then the clouds won't do anything. And so as a result, maybe Steven needs to be a bit more introspection. And for that, Blue recommends that Steven see White. And so, once more, Steven and Spinel go to see White, as apparently she now has a little, I want to say a shrine? A gazebo? I don't know. She's there. It looks like she's meditating there. And point is, she's happy to see Steven, and she acts all nice and serene, and it's weird, and I don't like it. But point is, she's happy to see Steven and wants to know what he's doing here. And so Steven's a little confused by this, but ultimately, Spinel talks about how White Diamond's powers work now. Put simply, they're in reverse now. As rather than her being able to control gems, she's able to have gems control her. Well, hold on one second, Shindy stuff. Apologies, but yeah, pretty much how they describe how White Diamond's powers work now are that essentially, since she's a white diamond, she can take a gemstone's unique glow and refract it through her gem. And as a result, the thoughts of whatever gem whose glow she's refracting are transported into her, and as a result, they control her rather than the other way around. Which White and Spinel demonstrate, as Spinel ends up taking control of White and has her do a funny little dance, which actually creeps Steven out, which I don't blame him, but ultimately once it's done, White dispels the whole thing and says she wants to have a word with Steven alone. So Spinel just kind of amscrays, though it's clear that she's a little curious about what the conversation's going to be. As such, Steven finally just kind of opens up to White about how his diamond powers have been coming in and how he has no idea how to keep them in line, how they're causing him to lash out, and how he's afraid he'll hurt someone, that he's afraid he has hurt someone already. And so White Diamond just tells Steven that she understands, mostly because there is no one in the universe like Steven, and whatever he's dealing with, it's probably something that he has no idea how to confide in others too. And so, as a result, she offers Steven a chance to have some self-introspection. And so, she offers Steven to try out the whole refracting thing. And so, Steven reluctantly agrees, and so White Diamond is able to refract Steven's gem into her own, and so Steven starts controlling her, with her now glowing kind of glowing pink, which makes sense since Steven is technically Pink Diamond. So basically, as Steven sees this, at first he's a little excited because hey, now he's controlling White, until it finally hits him that he's controlling a diamond, that he is a diamond, and suddenly Steven's good mood turns sour as he's like, no, this is the exact opposite of what I wanted. I don't want to be you. I don't want to be anything like you. He just yells out, go away, as he just slams his fist, and since he's controlling White, she ends up slamming her hand into a pillar, which causes the pillar to crack and send debris flying, some of which would almost hit Steven. And Steven just freaks out and says, no, don't hurt me, please, don't hurt me! But then it hits him as he realizes, no, she can't hurt me. I'm controlling her. I don't have to be afraid. And then, sorry, Ginny came back in. Steven remembers when he was on Homeworld when he was 14. When White Diamond held him in her hand as she ripped out his gem. And Steven's next words are, she's the one who should be afraid. And suddenly, the area from Steven's point of view changes. Suddenly, he's the big one, and White is under his control. He begins controlling her like a puppet. He holds her hands aloft as White, in Steven's voice, begs for him to stop, tells him not to do this, but Steven ignores her pleas. He turns her around and forces her to walk towards a pillar, and she just keeps saying, no, please don't do this, please don't, I don't like this, please stop. And Steven just says, this is for everything you put me through. As he has White grab the pillar, pull her head back, and slam it head first right into the pillar. And I have to remind you that that's where her gem is. Only the instant that this happens, Steven's kind of snapped out of it. As it turns out, he didn't smack White into anything, and rather, he slammed his own head into the pillar. And doing this actually quickly breaks his control over White, and White is just fucking horrified, because while she was connecting with Steven, she saw what he was seeing. She saw that little dark fantasy in his head, and she's like, oh my god, she's like, holy shit, what was that? But Steven, he's just on the floor, he's in tears, he's crying, he's just sorry, he's apologizing, and then he starts flaring up again. He starts swelling. He starts glowing pink. And then immediately White goes from horror to shock as she sees Steven freaking out. It's like, wait, Steven, hold on, what's wrong? But Steven says nothing as he just runs out of the room. And as he runs, Spinel follows because she wants to know what happened. And even Yellow and Blue are like, hey, Steven, was White able to help? But he doesn't say a thing to them. He just keeps running with Spinel after, and she says, hey, wait up for me. And so Steven says, wait, Spinel, you had Vengeful Dots before. How'd you get rid of them? And she's like, oh yeah, I don't have those anymore. And it's all because of a little someone named Steven Universe. At which point she starts singing the Make a Change song, and Steven just says, no, I don't want to hear my own advice. Before he just keeps running as he sees the diamonds following after her, because they're clearly worried about him, because something is wrong with Steven. But Steven just keeps running, and he keeps swelling, he keeps growing, he keeps glowing pink. At one point, as he ends up running out of the palace, he loses one of his sandals, and he runs to the warp pad, and he just is crying, and the diamonds and Spinel just pop out, and they just say, wait, Steven, stop, please, let us help you, we're your family. And Steven tells them, please, don't follow me, as the episode ends with him warping away. And this is what leads to the next one, Everything's Fine, as we see that the place Steven went to now was back home. Only, he's still pink, and the swelling has not gone down. Rather, it makes Steven look a little bit more buff. His hair looks mostly normal, so it hasn't grown out like when he was training with Jasper, but it's clear that Steven's emotional state is still high. The stress is high. The anxiety is high. And it's beginning to have an effect on everything around Steven. His dark thoughts, his anxieties are flashing on his TV, like the memory of him yelling at his dad, the memory of him fighting Jasper, the memory of him imagining smashing White Diamond's head into a pillar, which when Steven sees this, he turns off the TV. And at one point, Connie ends up calling because, well, because she thinks enough time has passed that she wants to check in and see if Steven's okay. And Steven just tells her, it's fine, everything's fine, don't worry about it. And she asks him if the swelling has gone out, or if this pink glowing is still a problem, if the swelling has gone out. It's like, oh, it's not a problem, maybe, everything seems to be fine. And she's like, it's maybe, are you okay? But Steven just tells her, no, it's fine, but I'll talk to you later, bye, and he hangs up. At which point, we see kind of the final step of Steven's breakdown. As he just goes full denial. He's like, no, I didn't do all those things. I didn't have a fight with my dad. I didn't shatter Jasper. I didn't imagine smashing White Diamond's head into a pillar. I'm Steven Universe. I'm fine. I'm perfect. I'm great. Everything's great. And it's clear that no, nothing is not great. As Steven's saying that, cracks his glass, at which point the gems hear the commotion and come upstairs and want to check in on Steven, and when they see him up there, Steven's like, oh no, it's fine, everything's fine, and the gems can clearly tell that something isn't right. They look at Steven and they realize that this kid is not doing well, and the gems at this point are no longer trying to pressure Steven. They're just straight up worried. Something is not wrong. Something is not right with this kid. And even Garnet removes her glasses, and we just see her looking scared as she just tries to say, "Please, Steven, tell us what's wrong. We're worried." But Steven just keeps telling him, "No, everything's fine. It's all good. I mean, I'm Steven Universe. I'm always fine." And the gems don't totally believe this, but they decide to stop pushing and decide to let Steven just do his own thing. As such, Steven says that he wants to go, that everything kind of went wrong after he left little homeschool. Maybe he'll just go back there and see how it's going. And so he rushes off using his super speed power, which again, I won't deny, is still a cool power. And he manages to make it to little Homeworld as he tries to look around and find problems that he can solve. And I won't lie, I love this part of the episode. This is honestly a really good part, mostly because it relies on cringe comedy. Let me put it this way. Essentially, we're seeing Steven as he's on the cusp of a breakdown as he's trying to help people, and it works in that it allows us to see that Steven is just so at the end of his rope that he's now having an effect on other people. But it's hilarious because things are just going wrong with the littlest of changes. And it's like watching a train wreck. It's horrifying to witness, but you can't look away. Your eyes are just drawn to the screen. And that's what happens with Steven here. As the first stop he makes is a botany class that Peridot is in charge of, which volleyball is actually one of the students there. And like I said, we don't see if her eye is healed, that she has a bouquet of flowers in front of it, so that's kind of funny. And Steven offers to use his saliva to heal some of Peridot's dead plants, which at first she's reluctant about since she heard about what happened with Cactus Steven. But she lets Steven do it, though she wants him to do a smidge, and he does that. And it grows into just a full army of hedge Stevens, which I love that. They're all just running around screaming and yelling, "Steven's here to help! Steven's here to help!" At which point even Garnet, who's in the middle of doing a couples council meeting, ends up seeing all this happening, gets into a defensive stance, and then Steven runs off, and then Steven says, "Well, you got everything covered, I'm about to go help someone else," and he runs away. Just before one of the Stevens runs up and is about to give him a hug, proclaiming him his dad. It's kind of sad, but funny. But anyway, the second thing that happens is that Steven goes to a blacksmithing class that Bismuth is in charge of, and she wants Steven to help him get some fine details in armor. So she puts out a bit of metal out for him and gives him a little hammer so he can iron some stuff out. And while Steven does do a light tap, it doesn't end up destroying the metal. But it destroys the anvil it was resting on, breaking it right in two, which horrifies Bismuth. At which point Steven runs off again, and he ends up in the middle of a baseball game that Amethyst is in charge of, and she tells Steven that they need an outfielder. And so Steven takes up the position, throwing out Larimar, who is just kind of literally sleeping on her position. And so Onion steps up to the plate and hits a ball, which Steven is able to catch before it slams through the window of the Heaven and Earth Beetle's home. And as such, at first, Steven thinks this is good because, hey, he didn't ruin everything. But as he proclaims, "Yeah! The yell is so great that it actually ends not only breaks several windows, but also destroys the home of the Heaven and Earth Beetle." And while Steven's apologetic to it, he's like, "But it was an accident, but aren't accidents a good thing? So we can build up better than before?" And so, yeah, immediately Steven and his hedge army begin working to try and repair the house, with one of them actually holding Larimar as she's sleeping. It's adorable. But yeah, despite this bit of cringe comedy, it's clear that Steven is just not doing well. And so, as Steven ends up returning back to his home, we see that an intervention is in the middle of taking place. As we see that as we see Connie, Greg, and the Crystal Gems all are just present, and they want to know if something's wrong with Steven. And the one who organized all this was Connie, because she did try to call Steven again and couldn't get through, and then she quickly realized that something wasn't right as Steven's thoughts began projecting through the phone, and she kept getting a repeating gif of Steven going up and down, going, "Steven's here to help! Steven's here to help! Steven's here to help!" And Steven keeps trying to write it off, act like nothing's wrong, but she says, "Are you sure? Because I think something's not right," as she shows the gif again, and it's glitching out to the point where it's now saying, "Steven, help! Help! Steven! Steven, help! Help! Steven!" Yeah, so Steven keeps trying to brush it off, and basically he keeps trying to pretend it's not a big deal, everything's fine. But even Greg says, "Look, Steven, if this is what you want for yourself, and you're happy, we'll support you 100%. But we want to make sure that everything is all right, that you are happy, and we need you to open up to us about it." And at which point Steven gets frustrated and says he doesn't have to deal with this. He has other things to do, and tries storming out. But the gems step in his way and says, "Steven, we just want to talk to you. We want to know if everything's okay. Please, just talk to us." And Stevens just says, no, everything's fine. Everything's just all fine. I mean, yeah, I've had maybe some not so good thoughts every now and then, but it's all fine. And maybe I've had, I got into a little disagreement with my dad, but that's like a rite of passage. I maybe have bad thoughts about slamming White Diamond's head into a pillar, but it's not like I'd actually do it. And I only just actually shattered Jasper, which... Yeah, the instant everyone hears that, they're horrified. And there's "You're joking, right?" And Steve's like, no, I fixed that too. I can just keep going on fixing things, and you don't have to ever think about it or do anything about it again. And yeah, when Steven says that, the horror the gems felt quickly turns to more worry. As Steven just says, "How messed up is it that I keep getting away with this? That I keep doing this? He talks about how they all look to him, how they see him as he's so all well put together, how he's so mature now. He always knows how to do the right thing, but the truth is, he's not that kind of person. He hasn't learned a thing from his mistakes. He's not that kind of person anymore. He is not. He thinks that they all think he's just some paragon, but they're wrong. He's not." In his own words, he says he's a fraud. Before he breaks down on the floor, repeats the word in a whisper, before he grabs at his head and he says he's a monster. And the last thing we see in the episode is something big, scaly, and pink bursting from Steven's back. Well, for starters, let's talk about it. Let's talk about Homeworld Bound. I'll get to the emotional bits after I bring up the lore bits for this episode. Like I said, what I like about when we go back to the gem Homeworld and Homeworld Bound is how we've seen how whatever Steven's intervention has had an effect on Homeworld. Like I said, while we've been seeing how things have developed for Gem Society from the Earth perspective, at the same time, the thing is, it's nice that we kind of expand more on other aspects of the world. We've already seen that the human zoo has been turned into a cruise ship that the Zoomans are completely in control of, which I like. I like that we get to check back in with certain gems and how they're doing, like in the case of Eyeball, Ruby, and Aquamarine, and how, despite the new freedom, they still have a vendetta against Steven and have sworn vengeance on him for all time. Sorry, things are digesting. And likewise, I like that we get to check back in with Homeworld on this. And like I said, I like the new aesthetic that the Homeworld has. I like that it feels so much more full of life. Like I said, it's now colorful, not just in the literal sense, but in the metaphorical as well. It feels so energetic, like there's so much joy and passion in everything now. It doesn't feel all sterile and cold and distant. It feels welcoming and friendly, like you're actually stepping stepping into a whole new world that's full of fun and amazement. I like it. It's nice. And I love how we can see that represented in the gems here as they're all walking around, having fun, doing their own thing, holding elections, going on tours. It's good, and I like it. And to kind of add to that, again, I like that we're able to check back in with some more characters from previous Steven Universe material. Case in point, Spinel. I like, again, that we get to see her. And of course, since I loved Spinel in the movie, it's nice to see her doing better for herself. She's no longer the same individual that we saw her as before. She's no longer full of vengeance, she's no longer clingy, she's no longer toxic, and while she is a bit more overly affectionate, and while she's still more overly affectionate, at the end of the day, she is a lot more friendly and happy, and is more put together than she was before. I like it, it's nice, and it makes me smile, and like I said, she needs all the hugs, and if I'm not allowed to hug her, I will punch everything. Like I said, you're next. But anyway, like I said, I like seeing that. In that same token, I like that we get to check back in with the diamonds. Now, I'm gonna say something right now. Their whole nice guy routine here feels off. I'm not gonna pretend it doesn't. Just like how it felt awkward to see them trying to be nice in Steven Universe the movie, it's just as awkward here. And while I'll say this, it's clear the Diamonds are trying to put their best foot forward and are trying to be better people here. It still feels not right. It still feels like that they're kind of forcing themselves to do this. Now, don't get me wrong. They are taking joy in what they're doing. You can tell based on their body language, their facial expressions, and all that. Like when Yellow Diamond restores a gem that she had previously shattered for the purposes of her gem experiments. You can tell that makes her happy to see them overjoyed, reunited with their friends. In that regard, it's nice. I like seeing that. And on top, I like that we see that White Diamond actually does offer Steven some legitimately good viewpoints about how she understands how he'd probably be dealing with his issues. I like that we're seeing Blue actually trying to use her empathic powers more usefully or more frequently and helping and actually trying to bring joy to other gems' lives rather than bringing sorrow. The problem is, we're still it's hard to still see these guys as anything other than galactic conquerors. These the Diamonds spent so much time from the original Steven Universe coming across as these sick, twisted monsters that seeing them actually trying to be good people, it's hard. And even in the way the way they all speak, with the exception of Blue, feels like they're mostly doing this because this is what Steven wants. And yeah, they're finding more joy in it, but you can tell, but it still feels like that if Steven wasn't in the picture, they would immediately go back to the way things were. So it still feels off. Like I said, I like that we're seeing them actually putting in the attempt. And they're not trying to fake it. They're genuinely trying to do the right thing here. And you can tell that the changes are that they are changing in positive ways. It feels like more of a fake it till you make it situation. They're trying to act all nice and sweet till eventually these things will be natural to them. They're trying to take joy in the things they're doing until eventually just doing these things will bring them joy. I'm at least liking that. So it still feels awkward, but it's still but at the very least I like that they're attempting, but like I said, it's still awkward. It still feels awkward, and it just feels off. With that said, though, another interesting tidbit that I like are, once again, the Diamond's powers. As what I find interesting here is that seeing how their powers have essentially been thrown into reverse, it seems to indicate that a Diamond's powers, like we see with Steven, are reflective of their personality, of their alignments, their moods, what they're like, and we've seen that showcased throughout Steven Universe. Like, case in point, let's use Pink Diamond as a baseline. From what we've heard of Pink Diamond prior to her turning over a new leaf and trying to become Rose Quartz, her powers used to be destructive in nature. She would throw fits, shatter rooms, which we've even seen with Steven here. And as a result, she was basically one that could tear a place apart by just stamping her foot. But then likewise, when she started seeing the value in life and wanting to help others, her powers did a 180, as instead of destroying things, she now had the ability to mend them, make things better, to heal them, which I find interesting. And likewise, we see a similar thing with Yellow, Blue, and White in this episode. Before, Yellow's powers had the ability to disrupt a gem's physical form, cause them to evaporate and disappear until they were nothing more than their gemstone. But now she has the ability to refine a gem's form, make them better or worse, or make them stronger, weaker, smaller, bigger, anything that anyone wants. And it's interesting. I find it unique and interesting. And it's a similar case with Blue. Before, her powers had made everyone around her feel sorrow, but now they bring nothing but joy. And again, it's very obvious with White Diamond. Before she could control people, now she can have people control her, which again makes sense. I like, because as they explain in the episode, it essentially uses the whole she's a White Diamond. She refracts all the light from all the other gems, and likewise, instead of having that so that she can overcome their light, she can now refract their light through hers, and again, they control her. It's again unique. I like it. It's interesting. So in that regard, it does feel. So then in that regard, I like this. As from a lore point of view, I'm liking what Homeworld Bound does. I like checking back in with Homeworld. I like checking back in with the Diamonds and Spinel, seeing how they're doing. I like seeing the thing with their powers, and it actually is reflective, as it does help indicate that their powers are linked to their moods. Which, by that same token, also kind of is a similar case with Steven, as before his power started out about healing, but as the negative emotions keep coming out, they're starting to revert to how they were when his mom was a spoiled brat, so there you go. But with that in mind, yeah, this episode even adds further fuel to the fire that is the mess of Steven Universe. As when Steven here's the thing. Part of the reason why Steven was horrified when Jasper proclaimed him as her diamond was the diamonds themselves. As Steven's powers came in, he specifically described them as his diamond powers coming out. Not, oh, I'm getting new powers. No, he's referring to them as his diamond powers, which, technically speaking, all of his powers are diamond powers. They're all powers, which we even see, like I said, demonstrated with the diamonds here. Now that they've all turned over a new leaf, their powers have changed to reflect their new dispositions. As again, yellow diamond can refine a gem's form, blue diamond can make a gem feel happy, white diamond can have gems control her, and so on. But Steven specifically refers to the destructive aspects of his powers as the diamond powers. And the reason why he was horrified, is because he has not forgiven the diamonds yet. Which, like I saw in Steven Universe, like I said when I talked about Steven Universe the movie, one of the things that worked in that movie was that while the diamonds were acting all buddy-buddy with Steven, it was clear he was uncomfortable being around them, and for justifiable reasons. These bitches have been up for a longest time, were trying to kill him and his friends simply because they didn't fit into the gem mold. They were seen as rebels, and the only reason the diamonds stopped was because Steven was technically a diamond himself, as he was the son of Pink Diamond. And as a result, the diamonds, and ultimately through that connection, the diamonds tried turning over a new leaf. But the thing is, you can't undo the damage they did. There are things that the diamonds can't just wipe away by putting on a smile and acting like everything's fine now. Steven and many other gems went through a lot of shit because of them, and I'll give credit where it's due. The diamonds are trying to make up for it. They are trying to put right what once went wrong. We especially saw that with Yellow Diamond in the episode, as she was taking gems that she used for her experiments and was putting them back together piece by piece. And even if they reform damaged, she uses her powers to make their forms better, so that they're back to normal, that they can heal and be themselves without having to worry about dealing with any major ramifications from having their gems still be cracked, especially since if they are still cracked, they can still they can just go see Steven on Earth, and he can use his healing powers to heal them back up good as new. But the thing is, Steven still sees them as the monsters they once were. And that's justifiable. Like I just said, they put Steven through horrifying shit. But you can't undo that. The mental scars still remain. And in Steven's mind, despite what the diamonds are trying to do, they still did a lot of horrible shit. And in Steven's eyes, a diamond equals a monster. Which is why when Steven refers to his destructive powers as his diamond powers, he's not talking about them as if they're a new ability that he needs to master. Especially considering that when he went all out against Jasper, he shattered her. Something he was not that he never wanted to do. He basically just looks at these powers and sees them as as just horrible. And the thing is, he only ends up going to the diamonds about trying to get them under control when he feels like he has no choice. And the only reason he's going to the diamonds is because they seem to have their destructive powers under control now. No, White Diamond no longer can proof gems. Blue Diamond isn't sending gems into sorrow. White Diamond is not enslaving everyone. Basically, they all seem to be doing better. So why isn't Steven? And so Steven keeps trying to talk to them. And what I like is that the diamonds are genuinely trying to aid Steven. And each of the bits of advice they give Steven is not inherently bad as well. Like, Yellow Diamond is able to immediately identify that whatever's going on with Steven's physical form is not something because of what he wants to happen. It's because of something going wrong psychologically. And as such, she directs him to Blue Diamond, since her powers are emotional. And ultimately, while Blue Diamond's powers can make Steven feel good for a while, well, the thing is, Steven's beginning to see himself as a diamond as well. He is seeing himself as one of these monsters, and as a result, he's beginning to beat himself up internally. And so even if Blue Diamond can make him feel good, there's going to be a part of his mind that tells him, you don't deserve this. You're a diamond. You're a monster. And that will essentially just override any joyous feelings that Blue Diamond's clouds can give him. And then likewise, when he's put in control of White Diamond, it doesn't give him that self-retrospection that he needed to talk to someone. No, rather, it has the opposite effect. Because now he quite literally is a diamond. He is the one thing in the universe he didn't want to be. And then likewise, when he realizes that when it finally hits him that he's actually controlling White, his dark thoughts come out. And that just pushes Steven further down the dark pit. Because, well, if Steven wasn't a diamond, if Steven really was still as pure and as innocent and good as he was when he was younger, then why is he having fantasies about ramming White Diamond's head into a pillar? Which, yeah. What I also love is that once it's clear that whatever's going wrong with Steven is just so deep-seated in his mind that it's actually causing him harm, I like that the diamonds are just immediately concerned with him. Because like I said, while it may feel like that everything they're doing here feels forced, the reason why they're putting themselves through this is because they love Steven, and they want to be a part of his life, and they're willing to go through hell and back just to try and be worthy of being a part of his life. And so theing Steven in physical, mental, and emotional distress, their immediate answer isn't, oh my god, what's going on? Well, their immediate thought process is, oh my god, Steven wants to kill us. Their immediate thought process is, Steven, what's wrong? Why are you having these dark thoughts? Do you need to talk about it? Let us help you. We love you. And it makes everything worse, as all this visit seems to do for Steven is confirm to him that he is going even further and further beyond. And even when he tries talking to Spinel about the fact, because she had vengeful thoughts too, the only difference is that she willingly acted on them, he tries saying, well, what made you stop? And she just throws his words back in his face, and those don't help Steven because he knows what's right and wrong. It's just that these thoughts are coming in more and more. And in Steven's mind, there's no difference between acting on those thoughts and just having them. Because, here's the thing, everybody has dark thoughts every once in a while. It's just a matter of whether you want to act on them or not. Sane people, good people, decent people, sane people can actually can realize the severity of these thoughts. And while sometimes that you can lash out and do things you regret, at the end of the day, just having these thoughts is not inherently wrong. You just have to have the mental capacity to realize what's right and what's wrong. Everybody has a dark thought or two. Everybody has had negative feelings towards someone they don't like. Has felt bitter, resentful, and imagined something dark and twisted. At the end of the day, though, their higher brain function can tell them no. That's not a right thing to do. And so while you can have that thought, Whether you act on it or not is completely up to you. And quite frankly, most people, Steven included, don't have to act on those thoughts and can push them aside and recognize them as nothing more than just that. Thoughts. They're just things that go through your head, and if you're able to work through them and filter them and able to find some way to keep yourself stable and help yourself out, then it can work. The problem is, though, that this is Steven. And Steven is supposed to be this pure, sweet, kind kid. And here he is, exacting vengeance on White Diamond for everything that she put him through. All the shit, putting his life on the line, her ripping out his gem. He thinks back on all those things, and he has dark, twisted thoughts. And again, what I like is that when White Diamond sees those, she is horrified by what she saw, but upon realizing that Steven's in distress, she pushes that aside and wonders, what's wrong? Do you need to talk? It's a small thing, but I kind of like that. I do like that. It shows that Steven does have a lot of support systems, and it's ultimately Steven who's kind of pushing them away, because Steven's his own enemy here. No one is making Steven feel these ways. It's Steven. He's the one going through all this. And it just keeps getting worse. In that regard, Homeworld Bound is really good in the world building and the lore, and how it adds to the lore, especially with showcasing Homeworld, the diamonds, and all that. But in terms of emotional, this is the episode where things are beginning to hit its zenith, where Steven is feeling like he's becoming the one thing he doesn't want to be, and all this journey to Homeworld did for him is just confirm what he himself is beginning to fear. And the fact that he ends the episode running back home and telling the diamonds not to follow him, exactly as he did with the crystal gems, it's heartbreaking. And everything's fine. It just kind of brings it all home. Now, once again, going back to other things besides what's going on with Steven, there is some fun that be had in Everything's Fine, believe it or not. And it's, again, like I said, in the cringe comedy in the second act. That, I won't deny, I laughed. I laughed harder than I should have when I saw Steven give a little bit of saliva and give it to one of Peridot's plants, and see it just result in her whole greenhouse exploding with plants as Steven copies flew everywhere, running around saying, "Steven's here to help! Steven's here to help!" I laughed harder than I should have, and I would do it again. But throughout the laughter, throughout all these mishaps, as Steven keeps trying to make sure that everything's fine, that everything will be okay, there's an undercurrent of distress. There is definitely, despite the name of the episode, rest assured, everything is not fine. Because Steven is hitting his breaking point. And the thing is, as these thoughts continue going through his head, as he begins imagining every dark thing that has happened to him, he just immediately goes straight into denial. And this kind of feeds into one of Steven's own problems as he deals with all these things. And ironically, it's the same problem that he had with his mother. Let me remind you. At the beginning of Steven Universe, Steven's mom was on a pedestal. Everyone looked up to her. Everyone thought, oh, she would have known exactly what to do. She always knows exactly what to do. Rose Quartz was perfect. She was great. She was an amazing leader. Oh, if only she were here, and all that crap. And Steven always felt that he had to live up to that. But little by little, as the show went along, that pedestal got chipped away, was cracked away a little bit at a time, until eventually, when Steven learned that his mom was actually Pink Diamond, the pedestal broke. Immediately, Steven no longer had to worry about living in her shadow. Made even better by the fact that with White Diamond doing what she did, it confirmed to Steven that he wasn't his mom. He was himself, and there was nothing wrong with being himself, and he could stand out by himself. And as himself, he did a lot of good things. He saved the universe. He ended the tyranny of the diamonds. He turned enemies into allies. He brought peace to the universe, and now Steven's dealing with all this shit because ironically, he's put himself on the exact same pedestal. And the fact that Steven is beginning to deal with these emotional issues, is having these outbursts, is feeling these emotions, it's chipping away at the pedestal just as much as it chipped away at his mother's pedestal. The only difference here is that the one standing on said pedestal is Steven himself, and he's the one breaking it down, little by little. And the fact that he doesn't have the answers, that he doesn't know what's going on, that he can't fix everything, it's breaking away it's eating away at him. And the fact that he's dealing with all these bad things that he himself is directly connected to, it's hitting him even more. Because as he says in the episode, he's Steven Universe. He's supposed to be perfect. He's supposed to always know the answers. He's supposed to be so mature, and they all expect so much of him. And yet, internally, it's getting to him. And quite frankly, it hurts. And you can feel the pain that it's going through Steven as he's finally hitting his breaking point. Because, speaking from my own experience, I've been where Steven has been. When Steven had his breakdown in the end of this episode, at the end of Everything's Fine, when Steven broke down and talked about how everyone saw him as this mature and great kid who always knew what to do, who always had everything together, and then he just throws it back in everyone's faces and says, "I'm not that kind of person. I'm not that kid anymore. I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm scared," and all that. It hits home for me. Because when I looked at Steven in that moment, I saw a bit of myself. I've had moments, not in public, but in private, where I've just broken down. Where I've just huddled up into a corner and cried. And I keep thinking to myself, everyone thinks that I'm this great person, that I'm this super nice guy, and yet I keep thinking to myself, if they knew me in private, if they knew how I acted, or the things I said, or the things I do, they would hate me. They'd be disgusted by me, and they want nothing to do with me. And when Steven has his breakdown, and he talks about how he's dealing with all these negative things, and how everyone still sees him as this bright and cheery kid who everyone can rely on, I saw a bit of myself there. I saw the pain. It hit home for me because I relate. That's part of the reason why this breakdown, I think, works so well. Because it feels very human. Dealing with these issues, dealing with these problems, and trying to still keep up this mask that everyone has built up for you, and tells you you're a good person, you've done all these good things, and yet internally you're like, I don't deserve any of this. I don't deserve to be with you. I don't deserve to be your friend. I saw all those feelings reflected in Steven at the end of Everything's Fine. And when he finally just came bare and started telling everyone about these negative thoughts, I felt the pain. I felt his sorrow. And when he just broke down and said, "I'm a monster," and his voice was wavering, I felt like I wanted to cry. Because it just hit home so hard. And this, believe it or not, is one of the reasons why I am one of the people that openly still enjoys Steven Universe Future. Because Steven's mental breakdown feels very realistic. They do not sugarcoat it. They show what Steven is going through from beginning to end. And they show how Steven is snowballing throughout the entire show. When Steven begins showcasing these issues, they start small. An emotional outburst here, a bit of anger there, and little by little, it starts getting worse. As the show goes along, Steven begins dealing with these issues more and more. And it's only made worse when he starts feeling like that no one needs him. When his friends begin moving on and begin experiencing life without him needing to help push them in the right direction, he feels like his purpose is gone. After all, like I said, part of what helps Steven get through his problems is by helping other people with theirs. And the fact that his friends were able to move on, were able to deal with all their issues without Steven needing to get them there, to help get them there, it made him feel left out, unneeded. Made worse by the fact that these are his friends and the directions they're going don't involve him. He feels abandoned. And we see those problems when we see how those problems are affecting him mentally when we get to the episode when we get to the I forgot what it was called. It was the one with Camp Pining Hearts. That annoys me. Well, but you know which one I'm talking about. The Peridot one with the Camp Pining Hearts reboot. We see that those issues are getting to Steven even more, as he believes he can't hang out with his friends anymore unless he's helping them fix a problem. And then there's Connie. Steven still had her. He relied on her. She helped him. But the fear was still there with her too. She was thinking of going to a college all the way across the country, and Steven felt like he was going to be abandoned. So in a bid to keep her, he proposed, thinking that as long as they were Stevani, everything would be okay. He'd have it all together. But it didn't work. That quick fix salute, and when Connie told him no, it didn't. It actually made him feel worse, because it made him feel emotionally abandoned by Connie. That she wasn't the person that he needed right now. And as a result, that led to Steven falling further down the rabbit hole, especially when it was made clear that his emotional reactions, him freaking out to the failed proposal, was just his brain hardwired to interpret danger as life-threatening because of all the shit he dealt with as a kid. And it just keeps getting worse. As a result, he can't be around Connie. He needs to stay away from her because of all the negative emotions that are connected to her. So his dad comes in to help. And at first it works. She provides the necessary support to help make Steven feel stable. But then when Steven starts confiding in him with his issues, he turns on Greg as well. Because Greg's advice, it's not applicable to Steven. And it's all about finding yourself in a constricting environment. But Steven did not have that constricting environment. He had too much freedom. All of this shit means nothing to him. If anything, he would have wanted a more constricting environment. And his dad continuously has not registering that all of this stuff is not helping Steven. It helped him. That's why he doesn't register it. But it just keeps getting worse. And so despite his dad still trying to lend a hand, Steven pushes him away because he begins realizing, you can't help me. You have no idea what I'm going through. And so he turns to Jasper. And Jasper tells him he needs to get control of these emotions. He needs to channel them. He needs to be able to utilize them. And like I said, inherently that advice wasn't bad. But then by trying to channel them, Steven goes too far. He lets his anger overcome him. He lets his anxieties get the better of him. And so as a result, he goes too far. And he shatters Jasper in the middle of one of their battles because he goes all out. And ultimately, combine that with everything Steven's going through, all of these emotional issues, all this trauma, and suddenly Steven becomes afraid for himself. All these negative things he's been doing, all these negative outbursts as a result of his emotional turmoil, he begins becoming afraid that he's becoming a monster. And it just keeps getting worse. He's already got confirmation. He already seems to think that he's a bad person after what he did to Jasper, after him almost getting him and his dad injured. And now he goes to the gem Homeworld. He tries to talk to the diamonds about controlling these abilities, only to get even further confirmation in his mind that he is a monster, as he has fantasies about slamming White Diamond's head into a pillar and making her suffer for everything that she did to him. In Steven's mind, these are all things that he shouldn't be doing. He should have this all under control. He shouldn't be making everyone worry. He should be good. And the more Steven tries burying that truth, the worse it gets, the worse it manifests. And I know, and I speak from personal experience, that the more you try to bury those emotions, the more they have a stranglehold on your mind. The worse you feel, the angrier you feel, the more on edge you feel. And the way we see Steven throughout the episode, as he is continuously on edge, as he keeps trying to do the littlest thing, and it just messes up every time. In a way, it's painful. And finally, Steven's family tries coaxing it out of him. And when Steven has to lay it bare, it hurts. The breakdown feels real. And quite frankly, yeah, it's just painful. I know I keep saying that, but it works. It works that well. Seeing Steven this bare, seeing Steven this sad, seeing Steven this sorrowful, it's a very realistic reaction. And we've seen how it developed throughout the show. And the thing is, this has been a long time coming, in my opinion. If you actually go back and watch the original Steven universe, you can see that Steven has had these cracks in his mind for the longest time, in small ways. He's put too much weight on his shoulders when it comes to bearing the responsibility with his mother. He feels guilt over failing to save people that he extended a hand of friendship to. And likewise, he has almost had breakdowns. He has lashed out a little in certain areas. And yet Steven has always and yet now we see that's not without anything to distract him. Without having people around that he trusts, people that he's pushed away, obviously, but without those people around, without problems to solve, Steven feels like he's losing himself. He's feeling angry, he's feeling vengeful, he's feeling sad. He doesn't know what he wants to be in life because his whole identity was defined around helping people, and now that he has to help himself, he can't do it. He doesn't want to accept these emotions. He's supposed to be perfect. He's supposed to be Steven Universe. Everyone's supposed to look up to him. Everyone thinks he's a great person. And yet, in his head, he's anything but. And the way that they show it in the show, the way they express it, and the way everyone reacts with their fear, their sorrow, their sadness, as they see how badly Steven's mental health has gone down the drain. It's terrible. And I mean that in the best way possible. It's terrible because it works, and it works because it's terrible. Steven's at a breaking point, and well, let's just say that when you finally hit your breaking point, you break down. You lose it. And, well, as we'll see in the next episode, when you're Steven Universe, and you have powers that are affected by your mood, that will age you if you feel like you can't be a kid anymore. Let's just say that when you feel like you're a monster, they'll be one in more ways than that. So, with that said, Everything's Fine is a genuinely decent episode. I call it decent despite the deep dive I just went into regarding Steven's mental health, because the majority of it revolves around the cringe comedy. And while that cringe comedy works to show how badly Steven's mental health is, it also is genuinely funny. Like I said, it feels like a train wreck that is just constantly going. That it's horrible to witness, but you can't turn away. And there is humor in seeing Steven kind of causing things to go wrong, which is the littlest touch. I laughed myself silly when I saw the hedge Steven try and grab him and pull him into a hug and call him dad. So that, in that sense, that's funny. That's typical Steven Universe comedic antics. But what makes it work, but I think what really helps it be memorable is the ending. When Steven is finally confronted by his friends and family, and they just try to gently coax him into telling him what's wrong. When Steven's breakdown feels very realistic, their worry feels genuine, and the sorrow, the pain, the anguish, it's all so human, so realistic, and it really does work. It really works, and I say to the Crooniverse, bravo. Bravo to all of you. So I say thank you. because this, I think, is a really good representation of mental health. A really good way of bringing awareness to this. And, well, with how we'll see when things get resolved, let's just say that it's going to be painful, but you need to confront that pain if things are going to get better. So, like I said, so overall, Homeworld Bound, great for world building, while further establishing how badly Steven's mental health has gotten, and even showing him getting close to the edge. And then everything's fine. Great way of showcasing how bad Steven is right now, with some excellently placed cringe comedy, some admittedly funny antics, and finally coming to a head with Steven finally being confronted as he finally has a breakdown. It's well done, well executed, feels very human, and on the whole, I think it's great. Like I said, episode decent, but that was great. And like I said, things are only going to get worse before everything can be repaired. So, yeah, apologies. The video is about an hour and 4 minutes now, but I hope you enjoyed hope you enjoyed it regardless, because, well, next week we're gonna be wrapping up we're not only gonna be wrapping up Steven Universe Future, but the Steven Universe retrospectives overall, as we reach the final 2 episodes of Steven Universe Future. And, well, let's just say that it's time that Steven confront his demons, both figuratively and literally. So till then, I hope you have a good day, and take care.